We are so thrilled to be doing this. We are the Friends of the Palestinian House of Friendship. And I wanted the members to please stand and give them a hand, the food, the whole production. We've been doing this now for about 9 years, and each time feels better than the last. We learn new things, both about the horrors of the occupation and the amazing optimism that Muhammad creates at the Palestinian House of Friendship. For me, this work has become quite personal. One reason is because the people-to-people connection is so powerful, and I and we now have a lifelong friend. But two, as a Palestinian Jew, my father was born in Palestine, my grandmother used to always say that the Jews in Palestine had no issues with Muslims. They were friends, neighbors, they looked out for each other. She used to say, but the problems began when the British got involved. So as we know, who tells and writes the story is the conqueror or the colonizer. In many cases, it's the same thing. Muhammad and I were talking about how, in this case, the story we've been given is that the fight between Jews and Arabs is thousands of years old. This is quite simply a lie. It's the original fake news. The Jews in Arab countries did quite well, vastly better than the Jews in Europe. So we must reclaim the narrative and tell our stories, and this is one of the things that Muhammad is doing in Palestine. It's not only the olive trees that are being destroyed, it's the history and the stories of the people. The third reason that this work is so meaningful for me is that in getting to know Muhammad and his life, the daily reality of the occupation is not an abstraction. It's become alive for me. It's my friend whose son was imprisoned and tortured. It's his family who suffers the daily indignities of checkpoints and obstruction of ordinary movement. And it inspires and sometimes even shames me when I hear about life under constant threat of imprisonment and apartheid, and I'm complaining about what's happening here. In the midst of occupation, Muhammad concentrates on how the Palestinian House of Friendship can develop Palestinian youth. I ask myself, what can youth development look like when 20% of the population is incarcerated and young people as young as 12 can be put in jail for looking at an Israeli soldier the wrong way? When Trump got elected, I wrote to Muhammad and he said, now you know what it feels like to have Netanyahu as president. We've been living like this for years. Muhammad's story helps us all to see in new ways. The Israelis depict Palestinians as the enemy. They are also sometimes depicted as totally victimized. Both these narratives are dehumanizing, although one is certainly more dehumanizing than the other. But Muhammad's work changes the story. It's a story of human possibility in the face of incredible odds. And that's why we are so proud to support him and his work. So before I introduce our speaker, who will tell you the story of how he as an Israeli came to understand what is happening in Palestine, Sagi, I'd like to, well actually we want to see, we changed the program a little bit. So we want to show you a very brief slideshow of some of the work that Muhammad does. neighbor or turn to the person behind you, the person that you know the least, and ask them what's their interest in Palestine, how they come to this event. So talk to each other for like 2 minutes. About how he came to understand what's happening in Palestine as an Israeli. Khalid.
Hi, everyone. I guess I'll stand, right? I can sit. Is that okay? Is it a little more informal? Thanks for facilitating that. I think it's rare for us to kind of get around these events and have a moment to check in with each other. Sure. I was saying maybe I should stand? Yeah. I was saying it feels rare for us to have these moments to check in with each other during events like this. We usually come in and we go out, we say hi to familiar friends. Yes. We rarely kind of get to know new folks. In just a few moments, Mohammed will talk to us about his organization, the philosophy he has for his work, and the ideas he has about the environment in which he planted the seed for PHF and fostered it to blossom so magnificently as we saw. But before he does that, I'll share a bit about how I arrived here, like we just did in the check-in. It's a bit of an introduction, but I won't waste too much time preparing you to what Mohammed will spend time explaining. He's going to speak for himself, and I'll just share a bit to set the scene and sort of the internal work that some of us need to do in order to come into these spaces. So unfortunately, this year, you might have heard, we'll be commemorating 50 years to the occupation. Exactly. Someone's listening. 5 decades have ensued since the War of 1967, in which Israel erected a military system of control over individuals who live in the land that's been taken during the 6-Day War. Because this is such a disheartening commemoration, half a century, I think it makes sense to stop for a second and maybe go back to the basics. And I'll go back to kind of my basics and what I think about during this year. So, I think those of us who've been working on this for a while rarely stop and ask, like, what is the occupation? What is it composed of? It took me a bit longer than I would have liked to figure that out. When I was born and raised in Israel, I didn't have the word for occupation in Hebrew. That was not a mark of my poor education. It was a mark of how my adolescence was treasured and protected from words related to oppression. I didn't know the word for occupation because, for all I cared, there wasn't an occupation. There was an us and a them. But I would have never conceived of my side of the fence, and back then it was still a fence, it wasn't a wall yet, to be the one trampling over the dignity of another. When I grew up in a secular settlement in the West Bank, we had to cross a checkpoint every time we had to leave town and go to the sea or visit my family in Tel Aviv. And when we passed that checkpoint, me, my mother, my brothers, my father, we were all greeted with smiles. You can imagine my happy young face, seeing brave soldiers joking with my father and waving us through nonchalantly. We used to give them bags of candy and snacks for holidays. We'd wish them blessed weekends and ask them to stay safe, and we thanked them for keeping us safe. I didn't think much of it. I was a kid. I didn't have a word for ethnic cleansing. I didn't have a word for administrative detention, for house demolitions, or for military occupation. I don't even think I thought of it as a checkpoint, because we never stopped. It'd be like a go-through point, a wave-on-by station. Somehow, when I moved to the States and learned English, all of these new, depressing words made it into my vernacular, and I was saved. I'm kidding, it wasn't that easy. Why am I sharing all of this with you? The work of the Palestinian House of Freedom is dedicated to the sacredness of youth, to resilience, to love, to nurturing hope, and to instilling a sense of civic compassion. Against the odds of dehumanizing policies, arbitrary decisions made by military commanders, constant policing, and the imminent sense of insecurity, the sacredness of youth has to be safeguarded. And the contrast to my childhood is telling. I never had to contemplate my freedom. It wasn't a paradox. And I later learned that the state did everything it could to provide me with security and freedom at the expense of the freedom of my Palestinian brothers and sisters, members of the same human tapestry I hold myself remembered to. So how did the state of Israel accomplish this? How has it safeguarded my childhood at the expense of another? The same example was telling. In order to protect settlements from threats associated with acts of terrorism, Israel did about 5 or 6 things that practically transformed the entire landscape and people's lives. Checkpoints that we all hear about constantly are these transit points manned by soldiers who discriminate access based on their mood, based on people's outlook, based on ID cards. This apparatus controls Palestinian traffic in the West Bank and throughout the occupied territory, violating one's freedom of movement, preventing people from seeing each other, getting to and from school, or even visiting the beach. And then we have Israeli-only roads. They enforce the checkpoint model and direct traffic through certain areas, and they're only accessible to people carrying an Israeli passport, having an Israeli license plate. Sort of clear idea of apartheid doesn't exist for me. One of the more pernicious parts of this Israeli-only road is that to construct them, they have to take up more land, like settlements. And they cut through villages and they cut through towns. And then we have the expanding settlements, where the state takes up land, confiscates it, expropriates it, says it has some military concern, and then erects a settlement that spends 50 or 40 years just growing, constantly taking more land. I can go on and on and on. All of these grant Israelis freedom that they carry with their passports, to give me an enjoyable childhood at the expense of another. So the long-term view of this oppression, as it's wrapped up in the occupation, is something more devastating that I'm slowly realizing. When we exercise, protect, and innovate such a technical system of control and a kind of organized tragedy, we have in effect slowly stripped away our own humanity by oppressing another. My point here is not like, oh, poor Israelis losing their humanity. Because humanity is not irretrievable. It has a new life with each new generation. But my point is that faced with choices and difficulties, Israel chose the sword. And and after we kept winning, we thought, well, then the sword thing is really working out for us. It's not like folks didn't have other ideas. They were just too cowardly to pursue them. Really enjoyed all the new military equipment that we keep getting from the US government. We've sort of been addicted to this culture of violence. In that process, we've instilled a new permutation of the soul, one that accommodates this violence by rationalizing the crimes of our history. And so the system keeps going, 50 years. Israelis can barely face the fact. I think we are literally the most defensive people in the world. This is precisely why, if we're going to be optimistic about the future, before anything really changes, we have to think about reconciliation, internal reconciliation among Israelis, before we can face the people we've been oppressing. So I want to share kind of a final note. It's based on something I read this morning that maybe is like a little sliver that allows me, again, to sort of understand how we got to this place. So after 50 years, the archives of the War of 1967 are finally getting declassified. And we're learning about what was discussed and thought about in this kind of catalytic moment of history in Palestine. Abba Eben, who just might be one of the more redeemable figures in Israel's political echelon, said this, the quote I'll read, when reflecting about the imminence of the occupation. He said, warning about the barrel of dynamite that will be the occupation, quote, "We are sitting here with two populations. One of them endowed with all the civil rights, and the other denied all rights. This is a picture of two classes of citizens that is hard to defend, even in the special context of Jewish history. The world will side with the liberation movement. The world will side with a liberation movement of 1.5 million people, as opposed to one surrounded by tens of millions. Even this political elitist, this liberal Zionist, had the prescience to understand there's something inherent in the occupation that's not working. That's sort of everything I have to say. I think Muhammad will say that.
Is going to introduce Muhammad.
We'll talk loud. Yeah, okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate you coming here and joining us to support this amazing organization. Amani and my family first heard about Muhammad and his I say it the right way, Muhammad, and his passion and mission a couple years ago when we attended his event at the Brooklyn Ethical Society. And from attending that, my whole family actually attended. We learned a lot about what he was doing and became really interested and actually hosted an iftar last year for Ramadan to benefit his organization. And we had a very huge turnout. My mom had cooked, and it was just a really beautiful night. And we're so lucky to be able to see him again this year, a year later, and to be able to see everyone here. And Manny wanted to say a couple of words about Muhammad.
So just if you're not we'll do it like really brief because we want him to talk, but just if you're not completely familiar with what the organization is about, the Palestinian House of Friendship works to empower Palestinian youth within Palestine to develop leadership skills through educational and recreational programs. So that's super important, right? We're talking about keeping hope alive in an occupied Palestine when you're dealing with occupation on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes we forget, right? These children need programs and resources to develop themselves so that they're ready to be their best people going into society. And just a brief background on Mohammed, he's the founder and director of the Palestinian House of Friendships in 1994. And he did this after being on the negotiative team at the Oslo negotiations in 1991. He is a father and a professor of linguistics at a university within Palestine, and we're just super excited to have him here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mohammed, our videographer has asked if you could come into the light a little bit so we can see.
Why you didn't do others?
Because he waited to say anything.
Just because I'm a Palestinian?
Reverse discrimination.
Okay, good evening everybody, and thank you for being here. Usually when I speak about the Palestinian House of Friendship or speak about Palestine, sometimes I don't know from where to start. But really, a day ago I was with friends just in the Central Park walking. Then we remembered, yes, that it is half a century now Palestine and West Bank is under occupation. And she asked me a question. What was your age at that time? I was born in 1993, so I was about 13, 14 years old at that time. And her question really just pushed me back to my village with my friends at that time, 50 years ago. Oh my God. I lived 50 years under the occupation. It's not an easy thing. What had happened? What happened in those 50 years? Then she asked me a question. What concerned you much about that time? Two things I remembered at that time. I remembered for the first time I haven't seen any tank, but I saw what do we call a convoy of tanks, of Israeli tanks. At the beginning, we thought that they are Arab tanks coming from the east to west. We had no idea about the development of war in 1967. And the other thing, it was very personal. It was very special. After we discovered that now we are under occupation, and the loudspeakers started saying, okay, there is mani' al-tajawul, there is a curfew, and everyone should go home, and all of these things. Yes, we ran to our homes. And the first thing that came to my mind, I was just saving some money in a wooden box that was given to me from my mom, just because my father was in Saudi Arabia, my sister was in Saudi Arabia, and all of the brothers were outside, so I was only with my mom and my sister. So the first thing that came to my mind that, okay, the soldiers will come into the house and they will take my money, so I went and just put the box of the money with me, and just to feel safe under all circumstances. But this thing, yes, just triggered something in my mind about 50 years. I finished my high school in the same village. I went to Birzeit University. I was just among 7 Muslim students in a Christian university, Birzeit at that time. I decided to run for the Students' Council the first year I was there, and people told me that you are crazy, you couldn't win. And to their surprise, I won, and I was on the Students' Council. After that, I graduated from Birzeit University, and I went to An-Najah Community College at that time. It was for 2 years. Okay, it took me about just 20 days until they just called me and they said that, okay, they are going to hire me there. And that was really a very good news for my mom, just because she's alone there. Because I told her I want just to go outside to work and so on. So it was a very good news for her. I worked also with students at An-Najah University, helping them in forming their own student council, because I had now an experience about that. Then also I saw that it is the time also for the teachers. They have to have a union. So I started that movement into having a union for teachers. And that put me in trouble, of course, with the Israelis. And from that time, I started really to be taken, to be detained, to be arrested, just as a unionist, just as an active within the students and within the teachers. And okay, it is in total, I was taken by the Israelis for about 15 times. About 6 of them under administrative detention. I spent some of them in the city of Nablus, others I spent 2 of them in a detention camp. It is called Katsiaut. Katsiaut, it is in the Negev desert, very close, 5 kilometers away from the Egyptian borders. And that was, of course, a different story. All right, I tried, of course, just to continue my education. I was prevented, then I put a lawyer, then I was able to go to Britain and to do my studies and all of these things. Well, this is just something about my background, about even for me to understand myself, or maybe others at least to have an idea about what kind of those 50 years were, and what were the stages in not only my life, in every Palestinian life who lived that period, or who are now, of course, were still under the occupation. The most harmful for me is to think that what I have passed through, that others could pass through. To be in prison, it's not an easy thing at all. You are deprived from everything, from everything. I'm not going to describe even when we were taken to Katsiaut, to the Negev, we were deprived from where, if we want to piss or to shit, there was no place for the first time to do that, or how to clean our clothes, and all of these things. So it was really very, very sad. It was really very horrible experience. And that really made me just to think about, okay, enough is enough. All right, and let's not let, okay, this experience, or not let our sons really to go through this experience. But not everything is in our hand. All right, so things developed politically in the Middle East, as you know, until there was the negotiation between the PLO and the State of Israel. Before that, of course, we stretched our hands to the peace lovers on the other side, on the Israeli side. We invited them to our homes. They invited us to their homes, either in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, in other places. But that was on a very solid base. And that is talking about 2 independent states. Both of them are free, independent, secure, safe, all of these things. And I think this is what we want. We want, for example, our own state. This is what we believe in. This is what I believe in, that we are people. We deserve to have a state, an independent state, not a state under occupation, not a state that is that has no choice about its destination or can plan for its people. And when the negotiation started, when the Madrid conference also started, all the Palestinians took to the streets. And many of them, they went to the checkpoints. And I still remember, in the checkpoint between Ramallah and Jerusalem, a young man, he ran with a flower to one of the soldiers, and the soldier shot him dead at that time. Well, people, they consider that maybe just a coincidence. The soldier did not understand. He did not see maybe the flower in the hand of that young man. But people, they were very jubilant. People, they were very happy that yes, peace is coming. And now the negotiation on certain basis And I participated in part of that negotiation under the umbrella of the Palestinian Liberation Organization as a unionist. And the whole thing, it was, from our part, is to achieve a real peace. Okay, Madrid, right, did not just get till the end of it, and there was some kind of negotiation was parallel in Oslo, and when the Palestinian delegation, where most of it from the occupied Palestinian land, when they understood that there is a parallel negotiation, they resigned. Dr. Haidar Abdel Shafi was the head of the Palestinian delegation, so he said, okay, we are going to stop here. And they left everything to the people of in Oslo and in Israel, and they came up with the Oslo agreement. Even when the Oslo agreement was ratified, when it was signed between the two people, people thought that it was a good chance. And George Bush at that time, he said, after 5 years, the Palestinian state, okay, will come to light. People on the ground, they discovered that it was a big lie. People on the ground, they started to feel that this is not the real peace, that many people lost their lives for. Many people, they are in prison, as many of them now on hunger strike. About 1,800 people now, they are on hunger strike, just not because they want to die, just not because they want to feel thirsty, just not because they want to feel hungry. No one. But it seems that they have a cause to do that. So when people discovered that the Oslo Accords or the Oslo Agreement was not really the goal that could keep or that could just secure even peace in the Middle East, okay, so people started really to raise their voice against that agreement. And you will tell me what happened. Well, we discovered that our land really is divided into 3 parts: Area A, Area B, and Area C. In Area A, it is completely under the Palestinian Authority. But the Israeli soldiers have the right to chase anyone whom they want. In Area B, from an administrative point of view, it is under the Palestinian Authority. But on the security level, it is under the Israelis. Area C, totally, it is under the Israeli control. And when we talk about Area C, we talk about 62% of the West Bank. 62%. So, if I want to move from Nablus to Ramallah, I have to go through these 3 areas. And if I want to go through these 3 areas, I have to behave as with 3 personalities. I have to behave with 3 personalities, not 2 personalities. An Area A person, where maybe I don't need to have my ID in my pocket. But if I go to Area B, oh, the Israelis could be there. Any Israeli soldier could stop me and ask me, where is your ID? And if I go to Area C, I am totally under him. He can arrest me. And he can apply the rules that are applied in Israel, all right? Even if I am driving my car, and for example, I don't have my license, okay, he can stop me and ticket me and fine me, not according to the Palestinian fines, according to the Israeli ones. So people started to discover that. And as my friend Sagib mentioned, people started to find that those settlements, they are started coming down and eating the Palestinian land. Farmers were not able to cultivate their olive trees. were not able just to cultivate anything that they grow. So people started really to get angry out of that. Now, if a Palestinian farmer dig, for example, a well in order to irrigate his farm, and if the Israelis know that, they come and destroy it. If he builds a house or an adjacent, something very close to his house, without a permission, they come and demolish the houses. The number of trees that have been uprooted from 1967 until now, 800,000 olive trees. They have been uprooted from the Palestinian land. And you can go to the Palestinian statistics and other statistics, B'Tselem statistics, you will find this figure. So, my friends, I and the people also there, they started really to feel that, okay, that was a big lie. 1 year, 5 years, 10 years passed without any sign of having or of tasting real peace. So people started really to question that. And even, I'll tell you something maybe you don't know, their uprising in 2000, it was against the Palestinian Authority more than it was against the Israelis. Just because when we talk about the Arab Spring, it was that time in Palestine. The Israelis interfered in that and started shooting the Palestinians and killing them. Then the whole thing diverted against the Israelis. Although the blame for signing the Oslo Accord, the Palestinians, of course, in addition to the Israelis who did not really implement what they have signed on to reach a permanent peace, at the end to have two Palestinian states. Maybe, okay, I'm not going to talk politics, I'll leave it for you, maybe to ask about it if you have any question, but I'll come back to the Palestinian House of Friendship. As part of believing in peace, and after signing those accords, one of the outcomes of that accord is to have Palestinian elections in order to choose our own parliament. So I and others thought of how can we be ready for that? Because any parliament that we are going to choose is going to determine our life and our children's life. And we are not prepared. So this is why we started the idea of the Palestinian House of Friendship, in trying to make some kind of civic education, telling people, for example, how to choose and what to choose and on what basis. And I think we succeeded. We succeeded in recruiting about 400 people voluntarily, without taking a penny to their pockets, in order to go and to monitor the whole process. We took the initiative in order to form the PDMC, the Palestinian Domestic Monitoring Committee, in the West Bank and Gaza, and we succeeded in doing that. And we monitored the elections. And even we wrote our reports, and we submitted our report to the United Nations about the transparency, about the violations here and there. Because we wanted really just to show them that there is an eye on them, on the whole process. We did that, but as I told you, everything just turned off. And as a result of just the continuous confiscation of land and so on, the uprising started, or the second intifada in 2000 started, and the Israelis came back to our cities, demolished the infrastructure, and closed the schools, the universities. Then we found, yes, that it seems that our priorities now are different. And the priorities is now to take care of the young people, of the children, and to educate the people. Because the most important thing is to invest in the human being and to invest in the people, because they are the leaders of the future. The Israelis are taking the land? Yes. I think history gave us many examples that many countries have been occupied. But at a certain age, the oppressor or the occupier was forced just to leave. So the land will stay. But if we lose the human being, if we lose the children, if we lose the culture, if we lose education, that is the most dangerous thing. And we were understood, we were aware, of that issue. So we decided that, okay, now let's take care of children. And this is from that time. Even under the curfew that was imposed in Nablus for about 40 days. And I still, until now, it was imposed for 14 days consecutively. But in total, it was for about 40 days. And they closed the schools and the universities for about 3 months. What did we do? We started the popular education. We started calling children just to come to wherever they can, to the basements of the buildings. And we went there and we taught them, just because in every building, in every place, there is a teacher. There is someone who can teach. And we continued teaching in the basement. And the first smiling faces summer camp, we did summer camps before. The first smiling summer camp for about 63 children, we did it in the curfew, at the time of the curfew, in one of the basements. And when the tanks were coming roaring around that building, we asked them just to keep calm. Sorry. And when the tanks just go, all right, we give them the chance just to shout, and to scream, and to cry, to do whatever they like. And I still have, and some of the pictures that you have seen, because I keep all the drawings that the children drew at that time. They did not draw anything except something related to rifles, related to tanks, to something violent, and all of these things. So you can imagine the situation. Anyway, as a strategy for the Palestinian House of Friendship, we decided to carry, various or different programs. The first one, as I said, it is the Smiling Faces Summer Camp, and we usually started with very few number, but now and in this year, we are going to have 3 camps. We are talking about now about 350 to 400 children who are going to enroll after Ramadan, after our fasting month. It is going to be from the beginning of July until the end of July. We are going now to have 3 Smiling Faces summer camps. And from these camps, we just give the children a good chance to play, to entertain, to involve in activities like drama, theater, the Palestinian dancing, the Palestinian dabka. And if it is safe between one city and the other, we take them into trips outside the city. We support them with necessary things. For example, we support them with at least every week with a hot meal. We care for them to have at least every day just a small bottle of milk and all of these things. Of course, this is really could not happen without the support that we receive from our friends here in the United States, and of course friends in Palestine also who support us for that. I'm not going just to talk into details In addition to that, now we started other, I can consider them very ambitious projects. We have already established a skate park in a near village, village very close to the city of Nablus. And this skate park is done with a cooperation between the Palestinian House of Friendship and a Scottish organization. And this project gives a very good opportunity to Palestinian kids, first of all, to have a new sport. Number two, just to give them the opportunity to direct their energy in the right way. And the Palestinian House of Friendship, in cooperation with the municipality of that village, of Asira al-Shimaliya, we announced a slogan. Maybe you will find it a little bit bizarre and strange. From Asira, and that is the name of the village, to Tokyo. From Asira to Tokyo. The Olympic Committee, they ratified that skateboarding is going to be a formal sport in 2020. And this is what we, in a very big meeting 2 weeks ago, we gathered all the children and we told them, some of them, they said, where is Tokyo? We told them about the Olympic Games, and we told them what does it mean going to the Olympic Games, and we told them that the word I can and we can as children under occupation, under the very, very severe economic conditions, yes, we can go and we can reach Tokyo. And now they are working on that. We finished a playground also in the same area. And when I say the same area, it is an area that is given to us, to the Palestinian House of Friendship, from the municipality of Asira. And this village, it was visited by my friend Shoshana. She came and visited us, but before these projects, and I am very happy. Now we are in her place now, and so thank you very much, Shoshana. And the kids, right, that she came and visited them, they keep just asking about her and about her kids who came and visited us at that time. So in that spot, we finished the skate park, the playground. After I go back, we are going to open what we call the open theater. So also we established an open theater. And with a Danish organization, there is a very small place. We are going to finish it as a park. So the whole thing, 4 dunums, which means about 1 acre, all right, it's going to include all these things for children. Am I talking about the children of Asira? No. I'm talking about the children of about surrounding of about 10 and 11 villages around Asira. And the people started to know about especially the skate park. And my university where I teach, the Faculty of Sports, now they are going to consider that place as a place where they are going to include also this sport for the university students. Something happened while we were building all these things, and you would not imagine that. The Israeli helicopters, from time to time, they came hovering over the place. Who helped us in that? A group of volunteers coming from different parts of the world. We and them worked 5,883 hours, and we accomplished this great project that now gives the chance to people really, or to children, to express themselves. We have so many things, but I'm going to talk about a very ambitious project now we are going to have, and that is a music studio. Children in Palestine and youth, they love life. They like to sing. They like the dabka. And when they dance, they talk. No one listens to them. They talk about the situation, but no one listens to them. They talk about the social life, but no one, the parents even don't listen to them. They talk about the economic life. They talk about the political life. Politicians, they don't listen to them. I have done a study about this, and I have discovered if politicians, if people who are responsible wherever they are, if we listen to the inner language of these people, we could take really right decisions for the future. Because, and I think this is not only in Palestine, I think it is all over the world. No one is listening to the younger generation. So in this studio, we are going to record their songs. In this studio, we are going to record their music, to give them a chance. And for this, we are working now with the University of Manchester, who is going to give us the equipment. But also, I have not to forget that we have here also in the United States some people who believed in what we are saying, and one of them is Maria over there. Could you please give her a clap here? Who just believe in what we are doing. And I hope within 1 month that will be a reality in the Palestinian House of Friendship in Naples, where people can know that they can go, they can record, and they can sing. And the last thing that I want to mention, we are going to use this studio to record the Palestinian oral history. Our history is in a real danger now. Our language, our costume, our falafel is in a real danger. It's not only the land, it's not only the water that is now being taken from the Israelis, from the occupation. I am very much worried about the oral history. Our grandfathers are dying, but they die and they take with them beautiful stories. Beautiful stories. Stories about peace, about reconciliation, about loving the other. My father died, my mother died, but they told me a story. When they were in Safad, which is now an Israeli city, they told me, my mother told me that her neighbor was a Jewish woman, a Jewish family. And when she came to know my father, that Jewish family prepared everything for her wedding. She told me how much love they had. I still have this story. I still know that Safad was the place where my father and my mother loved each other. They have a love story there, but also they have a love story with their neighbors. There are people, politicians, corrupt politicians, who are trying really to damage this life. I think we should not let them go with that. We have, from the two sides, tried to dig in the culture, to dig in and bring these stories and to tell them that this is what we have. No, sorry, not to tell them, but to tell the coming generation, the younger generation, that this is what was life. And this is life between people. I'm not talking about a Muslim and Arab and a Jew or whatever, but I'm talking about neighbors. And while I was now with my friend, I was reading a very beautiful book, and that is Confronting Zionism. Yes, Confronting Zionism. And I read that. And I read many testimonies in that. And that surprised me. Even I can consider myself a reader. I read a lot. And I know. But it seems that there is now ignorance on both sides. And this ignorance really is catastrophic. So I decided with some of my friends to translate that book from English into Arabic. And I'll try my best with the help of whoever, just really to let Palestinians just read this book. It's not written by Muhammad. It's written by Segal. It's written by Esther. It's written by others. It's written by people who lived on the other side, and we don't know them. And I think this is, I'll finish this. I think this studio really is going to build bridges between people. It's not going to be at all a wall to keep or to build hatred among people. Thank you very much.
Questions, comments, some conversation.
Can I sit down?
Of course. Judy.
Yeah, could you share a little bit also more about the economic situation? Because I don't think a lot of people fully understand how it's shrunken, how hard it is to make a living, why you're focusing often on poor children and children who have disabilities. So some of the circumstances that the families and children face.
Yes, generally speaking, I can say that the unemployment in the West Bank, it is 48. In Gaza, it is 63. So that can give you an indication about about the economic situation. I can say that my estimation, more than 60% or 70%, they live below the poverty line in Palestine. One thing, is the income. Our salaries are not the same salaries as the Israelis. But when I want to buy anything, I buy it with the same price. So if I want to fill my car with gas, I fill it and I pay the same as the Israeli pays. But for example, if I want to show how is my income or the average of the income of the Palestinians, okay, that is really very, very low. This is number one. Number two, the donations that come to us, they are only for giving salaries to employees. And I think this is now the hypocrisy of the donors. They want only just to give the money for salaries, not for building economy where we can or you can use hands in order to work, for example, in factories and so on. We don't have that.
Explain
why? I think it's just because to confiscate the political, let's say, position, the political stand from the Palestinians, because I'll tell you, if the Europeans and the Americans do not give the Palestinians this monthly amount of money for the salaries, the Palestinians won't be able just to pay the money. And tomorrow, there will be a revolution against the Palestinian Authority. This is not what we want. The kind of investment, the kind of donation, and this is why I say this is really very hypocritical. If I were, instead of the Europeans and the Americans, and if I want really to give money, I want to give it for building a kind of economy that can be sustainable, that can help the continuity of building a state. The money that is given, it's not for building a state. The money that is given is just to keep an authority without having all the requirements of building a state. This is what we have, and this is why we have such a deterioration in our economy.
Anybody else? Yes.
Yes.
Do you have a particular program for how you explain the situation to children? I mean, do you talk about racism as a general phenomenon, or the difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism? Or, I mean, how do you discuss the political situation with kids of various ages?
Yeah, I think this is really a very interesting question. The most important thing is loving the other. We don't really bring political issues, as we now talk about here, into the summer camps. I think the kids, they have more than this. Yeah, I can say that children, they have a lot of suffering in their life. And if you talk with them about such political issues, I think you add to the frustration that they have. What shall I tell them? Shall I tell them that, for example, all right, about Oslo Accords, and now this is what we have? So you have to disagree with that and go to the checkpoints and throw, for example, stones at the Israeli soldiers, and after that we will have 1 or 2 killed? No, I don't want really the kids really to have this. What I want them to have is just to enjoy their life as kids, to live their life as kids, to feel happy, to be educated, to involve in dancing, to involve in drawing, to come part of our scouts group. We have a scouts group of about 152 girls now. What do we teach them? We teach them just to reach all the people who are at risk. Orphans, old people, needy people, in times of winter times, for example, to collect blankets and to dig at the, ring? No. To bang on the door and to give their offers. To have a slogan like, collect it, clean it, iron it, and give it. I want to teach them this. I want to teach them how to love, how to cooperate, how to respect the other. And I think this is the basic for any political issue when these people, for example, are ripen, for example, to go to the university and to involve in such actions. At that time, you guarantee that this child really will take the right thing, but not to impose on them now these political things.
Yes.
Thank you.
Not so much in discussing politics.
Could you please raise your voice?
Not so much in discussing politics, But are the children, do they have any place they can go and vent their frustration? Like, let's say, oh, my brother was arrested yesterday by the IGF, or the IGF broke into our home 2 nights ago. Do they have any place where they can go to talk out their fears, their frustrations?
Unfortunately not. And I have experienced that with my son. My son was in prison for 3 years and a half. And I was just talking with one of the psychologists, psychiatrists here. He's now 30. And until now, he's suffering. Although he is now doing his master's degree in management. But from time to time, he wakes up shouting, crying. He has a loving father and a loving mother, and we know what's going on. I spoke with him, for example, into going and seeing some psychiatrists and others. I don't know, maybe because of it's our culture. Okay, he refuses. No, I'm okay. I don't want to go. So this example, it is now for thousands. Unfortunately, many of the people who just go out of prisons, many of them, I can say maybe 80% of them, they just deal with their issues by themselves or by their family. But maybe this is just because every Palestinian, every young Palestinian is vulnerable to be arrested. So it's not only one or two. And you go to the street, you will find that most of them have experienced being in the Israeli prisons. So they talk with each other, but I'll tell you, are they living really the post-trauma and the severe one? Yes, they are. Are their parents live that? Yes, they are. Am I one of them? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. And I confess that. And sometimes I find myself cannot bear what's going on. But, okay, this is the situation. Despite all these things, I think this is in life to have challenge. And as I always telling my friends that we have no alternative, because the alternative is to die. The alternative is to lose everything. And I think there is something very great among Palestinians. Their love for their land. They are very cooperative. They are very proud of their culture. They are very proud of their traditions. And I think that gives them that kind of immunity that really keeps them going on. We in PHF, in the Palestinian House of Friendship, we want to add to that. That is available. But we want to add in the programs that I talked to you about that. So this is why I come here. My university asked me to stay in order to give a summer camp, to give a summer course. I told them no. I know that my coming here really will help those kids and will help me, will help us finishing these programs. Believe me, I'm not exaggerating. My happiest time is when I go to the playground or to the skate park and I look at them skating, shouting, laughing. That is my euphoria. That is the top of everything. And I hope that we can have what we have here, not only in that area, but in every Palestinian area. I hope so. So that could be one of the answers, yes, to what the young people are now facing.
There will certainly be time to talk with Mohammed later, but we want to ask Judy to come up and the time to open your pocketbooks.
I mean, we can continue some questions after. I just, it seemed like the perfect moment to also, though, consider how we can invest and how we can build on the hope that Muhammad is talking about. Because I've been noticing, I mean, I think of the difference between us having this conversation this year and last year, and how the whole world has changed, and how I think our relationship to what's going on in Palestine has changed. In that I think here in America have recognized that we are also on a rudderless ship. We are on a leaderless vessel, which is how Palestinians have felt for so long. That the future is completely in our hands, that our leaders have abandoned or betrayed or incapable of leading, and that little by little we see grassroots efforts that are providing the leadership, and that if we don't invest in them and build them together, nobody else is going to do that. And I think that we understand that now here in a visceral way that we didn't understand it before. And I think that we've sort of turned to each other and said, oh my God, we're in charge. There's nobody in charge. We are the only adults around, and we're going to have to take charge of our own destiny. And you've provided us in a very real way that leadership to say, we're going to create the environments that we want and that we think our children will learn how to lead a state, lead a democratic future, have the tools that they need to govern. And it isn't with ideology, it isn't with teaching them, what's the right 12-point program. It's learning how to love, build community, how to be giving to each other. So, it's almost cliche to talk about investing in philanthropy these days, but this is a different kind of investing. We are like building the threads of a fabric that might produce, that are our only hope to produce some kind of a positive future for all of us. I got an email earlier today that said that there are going to be tomorrow, on the eve of Trump going to Israel, that there are going to be 400 Palestinian and Israeli women meeting together to have a summit to discuss solutions and to come up with creative answers for how to solve the crisis with each other, without big state agendas, but with human agendas of what they would like to see, coming with their own grievances, their own feelings of injustice and differences between each other. But they are meeting on a street corner in Tel Aviv, and 300 women are going to talk with each other. Although we should point out that it's almost 100% certain these are Palestinians living in Israel, because Palestinian women from Palestine can't get there. They're not allowed there. The idea of 300 Palestinian women trying to cross these checkpoints to say, we're going to a summit to solve the international crisis is absurd. It will not happen. But even the symbolism as well as the reality of Palestinian women and Israeli women saying, we're going to solve this. It's the same as listening to the children's lyrics and poems and finding where are the answers there. And so when I look at those slides and see, I was amazed when I saw the size of that skateboard park, when I saw the scope of what they've built with so little that we've been able to collect compared to what so many philanthropic organizations collect and raise. I mean, organizations raise millions of dollars and do this much. We raise thousands and tens of thousands of dollars, and they've created this amazing park, this amazing music studio plan. I think of StoryCorps. I think people here know of StoryCorps here, of these stories that have begun to be recorded. To think about that oral history happening there would be extraordinary. I'm also thinking of some things that have happened in the human rights arena in the last couple of years, where there have been, there was just a case in Senegal where a former dictator who murdered 40,000 people in Chad, the Chadian dictator, his name is Hussein Habré, for 25 years, the victims of his dictatorship have been collecting stories from other victims and writing them down. And it was finally an international court that came into being in Senegal that tried him and condemned him to life in prison. And for these victims of his violence, it's the first time that a dictator has been tried and condemned outside of his own country in ever. It's not an international court, it's an African court trying an African dictator. But the core of that case were the testimonies of the people who suffered under him. And it was victims themselves that formed an association documenting their own stories and their own history. And that was what was irrefutable. It happened in Guatemala as well. But because they still operated the state, he was condemned. But the victims were able to confront what happened. We were talking earlier how Macron in France just said, you know, that war in Algeria was a crime against humanity. That's an extraordinary thing for the president of France to have said, even if the majority of French don't agree with it. It was stated, and it creates an environment. At the same time, I remember when de Blasio became mayor of New York, he said to New Yorkers, if you see someone homeless on the street in this winter, it was January, he said, ask them if they need anything. And in the same way, I felt that it transformed the city's attitude towards homelessness in New York. We saw people's humanity. So I think that that is what we're looking to give as being part of this project, is to give children back their childhood, to give people their humanity, whether it's homeless people in New York or victims of torture in Senegal, or the children of Palestine, to have their humanity, their childhood, is something that we can create together here. So I am asking all of us to be part of this, not just one time, but to, if you can, think about the most that you can give and to pledge to do it for the next 3 years. Many of us have been to these now we've already been giving for 5 years. But Mohammed has to be able to plan for the next 3 years. So if he knows that what's pledged tonight is something he can count on for the next 3 years or 4 years, that would be an incredible gift, so that we're not starting at zero each year. So everybody, we did this last time, everybody have a smartphone and an envelope. You can write a check tonight or give cash tonight.
Who do you write the check to?
The check goes to, and here it is.
You could just hold it up.
Yeah. This is the number to text to, 917-741-6244 to text your pledge. But the checks get made to the advocacy project. Whoops. The advocacy project, and then you designate it to PHF. Okay, so that is the nonprofit fiscal sponsor. So you get it fully tax deductible as allowed by law, as the wording goes. But just designate it to PHF on the check so they know what that contribution is for. And if you can take this telephone number and text your name and how much you're pledging and for how long. But if you could write your checks tonight, that would be truly terrific. That would be fine. Just write the advocacy project on top of it. Above it, you can write both in that line. Okay?
And if you just have cash, put it in the envelope and put your name on it. So
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
We're gonna pick the raffle winner. So
Yeah, don't go anywhere yet.
We're doing it now. Whoever submitted a raffle, pay attention.
I'd like to get a few for you guys. I think so. Maybe we can talk about this year. Maybe for
Sarah Turner? Dan Turner?